Hey, what's up, everybody? BDO44 coming at you with another video. All right, so from what I just read, Karl Anthony Towns is expected to be traded within the next 3 weeks. Now, I don't know how much credibility that holds. From what I just saw, also, he has a contract for 6 years. I think it was $133 million. I think that's what that said. Um, to me, this is inevitable. If you guys have been following this channel long enough, you heard me talk enough about that Rudy Gobert trade, you knew that the only solution that the Minnesota Timberwolves had to this situation was to either trade Karl Towns or Anthony Edwards. That's all they could do. They don't. They're never going to get what they gave up for Gobert. They're never going to get that back, and they need that back. That's the bottom line. You weren't supposed to trade Rudy Gobert for that absorbent amount of equity. You gave all that to Utah. You got back a player that was not even close to that level. And now you're stuck with a three-man, three-star rotation situation, which means that now that the collective bargaining agreements have gone the way they have, they're going to probably likely be over the second tax apron or something of that nature by just having their team stay together with those three on tab at the same time. So you see Chris Paul getting waived, and now Karl Anthony Towns is probably going to have to be traded. And if you start looking around the league at certain other situations like that, you're probably going to see other teams do the same thing, start to shave off pieces that you didn't expect to get traded, guys who can get waived on these ridiculously large contracts, because it doesn't really make as much sense to go over that tax apron, especially when you don't believe you can win a championship. So the Minnesota Timberwolves know that they're not necessarily a championship contender. It looks like they have a good chance of losing Nas Reed. So it's like, how good are they expected to come back with that three-star model? And the answer is probably not very good at all. So what you do is, the only thing you can do, choose between Karl and Anthony, just like I said. And Karl is the guy that they're choosing. So this is a situation where you wonder where Karl's going to end up. There's so many different directions this could go. But if I'm going to be honest with you, if I'm Minnesota, what I really want is one of them draft picks. And here we go again with the same old problem that I was telling you guys about. Because they have to match salaries, it's more difficult to try to make that make sense. I'm going to give you a draft pick and a bunch of stuff that's not good on salary, as to which you're going to take that back and now be over the cap with bad stuff instead of Karl Towns. But you got the pick. It's like it defeats the purpose of having the pick. Because what the pick is supposed to do is give you an inexpensive piece on a high level. To playing at a high level. So it's going to be tough to see what Minnesota actually wants to do. First of all, well, we got to see what they want to do, but it's going to be tough to see what they're actually able to do based on just the restrictions of what the current day is, and ultimately their lack of assets, having given it all up for, obviously, Rudy Gobert. So I've heard Phoenix being mentioned as a destination for pretty much everybody. I don't know where they're getting this money from, but obviously with getting rid of Chris Paul, one would think they would be able to swap DeAndre Ayton for maybe Karl Towns, but at that point, that doesn't necessarily make any sense from the Minnesota standpoint, because you're essentially taking back the same problem. You need to shave salary. So in that event, if there's something like that happens, I'd imagine Ayton would be going to a third party, and then Minnesota would be taking back lesser pieces and picks. That's how that has to go, I think. Some variation to that. Maybe you see, trying to make sure this makes any sense, I think it does. Maybe Jaylen Brown on the side in trade. Karl Towns. You pair up Karl Towns with Jason Tatum. I don't hate it. I don't love it either, though. I don't love it, but I don't hate it. There are going to be so many different places he can go. Karl Towns is going to be a highly sought after athlete. People are going to mention the Lakers and Anthony Davis, especially since Anthony Davis is up for his extension. One will wonder if the Lakers won't try to pounce on something like this as an opportunity to maybe get themselves a star in his stead. Do we find ourselves better for that? I mean, Karl's younger. I don't want to disrespect Karl. He is a star. But I don't see him as an upgrade from Anthony Davis. No. So it's one of them situations where I'm not doing that trade. As a Laker fan, I'm cool. So it's like, where's it going? Miami for Bam? I don't think Miami's in the business of trying to make any real changes. And I don't think Karl's necessarily a Miami guy as far as what they're doing. But, then again, a player of that caliber is an anybody guy. They'll be lucky to have Karl Towns. Don't get it twisted. So it's kind of like, I don't know. Maybe a team that you don't see coming may do something to try to do some things that make sense. Portland. Yeah, I'm not saying Dame is going to be traded to Minnesota, but that might be a way to keep Dame. Maybe you can bring Karl to him, and trade the picks and trade some stuff. Trade Anthony Simons, right? Put Anthony Simons up there with Anthony Edwards and Rudy Gobert. That's kind of interesting. Maybe they can try to snag another player or two from Portland or something like that. Get a third team involved. Get something else going somehow. And of course, you would want that third overall pick from Portland in the event that they're going to be taking back Karl Towns. I'd imagine Minnesota is going to want that third pick, or the third team that they're going to make a trade with would probably want that third pick, and Minnesota take back something else. I don't know, but if I'm going to try to do something like that and I'm Minnesota, I actually feel really good if I can maybe do that, honestly, because at that point Minnesota could really bring themselves an inexpensive piece. Could be really, really good. Talking about Cam Whitmore, Miller, maybe even if they get lucky and Charlotte skips on them, Scoot. And you putting Scoot and Anthony Edwards together. Can you imagine how awesome that would be? So there's just a lot of things you could see that turning their situation around if they maybe are able to do something like that. Minnesota fans would be really excited about that, and it would reset their situation really, really nicely, because now you got Anthony Edwards next to a superstar youngster. Rudy Gobert is the least of your worries at that point. You just live with it and just focus on the development of the players you have. Drafted player Anthony Edwards, McDaniels, probably somebody else they could sign in free agency since Nas is probably leaving. Maybe they get D'Lo back. I doubt it. Anthony Simons in this case, because he was traded from there to Portland, from Portland to Minnesota. So all these things that looks pretty good to me. If I'm the Portland Trailblazers, I'm not sure if Karl Towns is the answer instead of Miller or Scoot. I don't know. I don't know if I see it that way if I'm Minnesota. Portland. But from where I'm sitting, that's a pretty decent swap. That's pretty decent. It'll help the Minnesota Timberwolves a whole lot if they can get one of those top 5 picks in this draft, while simultaneously getting out from under one of those big contracts so they can reset their situation and make more sense. Now, if I were Minnesota, to be honest with you, I would genuinely try to trade Rudy Gobert. Notwithstanding the idea that they're definitely not getting back what they gave up for him. But in a nutshell, what they really need to do is shave off the player that's least likely to perform. Not necessarily the guy that's more likely to be able to be traded. That's not the way to go. You keep Karl, you keep Anthony, and you just trade Rudy Gobert for whatever crap you can get back for him. Literally. That way your team still looks good. You're not stuck with a lemon like Rudy Gobert waiting for him to get worse. Karl Anthony Towns is not going to get worse. And he's the guy you drafted. So it's like, for me, it's like, I would rather, and maybe I haven't thought this all the way through because I really am just kind of thinking it, brainstorming it now. But for me, what I would want to do is try to trade Rudy Gobert for whatever the heck. And trade him for Ayton. And then in the same trade, of course, flip Ayton to somewhere else. Take back your 3 contracts that are comparable and let them play themselves out. Trade them, because likely what you'll get back won't be too bad to not be traded at the deadline. And then you got your situation reset. Maybe you got some pieces you like. You got a little money. You know what I mean? It's a lot of things that Minnesota can do if they just accept the loss that comes with Rudy Gobert's piece. Because doubling down on it doesn't bring you back what you lost in the trade. But getting rid of better players does make the team he's on worse. And you got Anthony Edwards in the balance. So it's like, are y'all sure you can get better by trading Karl Anthony Towns while keeping Rudy Gobert on contract? Because the problem is not Karl. It ain't Anthony, obviously. It's Rudy not being that guy that you traded for him to be. So that's where I am with Minnesota. If I'm a Minnesota Timberwolves fan, I definitely want them to make a move. But I'm not so certain that we just need to trade one of the more desirable trade pieces. You know what I mean? Just because we can trade Karl and probably can't trade Rudy for what we want him to be traded for doesn't mean that it isn't a plus to get Rudy's contract off of your books. Get his contracts off of your books. Karl's contract ain't the problem. And so that's what it really comes down to. They're going to send Karl somewhere. He's going to be playing well there. Depending on what you do, Minnesota, you're probably still going to be Minnesota. Not better than you've been. And this is how that happens, by making mistakes and then doubling down on those mistakes by continuing to hold on to the asset that's not holding the value. So maybe they want to trade Karl Towns to get back what they think they lost from the Rudy trade. But that's not how that'll actually equate, because you still got Rudy on the contract not being that guy. So it's like, nah, I understand that maybe they can make a move with Karl that can bring them something they love. And if that's the case, cool. If you love Miller and you think he can get you that, cool. Or maybe even better, maybe you love Rudy Gobert and you don't want to hear nothing I got to say about Rudy. Cool, then that all makes sense. All makes sense. But in my mind, Rudy's the guy they probably want to get rid of. They just don't think they can. That's in my mind, though. So take it for what it's worth. At any rate, I'm curious to see how they look with McDaniels coming back, because he's only getting better. That kid is only getting better. He's one of the best defensive players out there, and he's improving offensively. So it sucked to see him hurt his hand or wrist, or break his wrist, however that went. No, he broke his hand. That's how that went. He socked the wall, and he didn't know there was a wall behind it. But that was just unfortunate. And I just think he's probably their most covetable piece outside of the Anthony Edwards. I really believe that. Or Karl Towns, of course. But I don't even know I don't know that Karl Towns is on demand like that. Now we're gonna find out what the market looks like for Karl, but I don't know that Karl has really overly impressed the field, because Minnesota ain't really did anything. And so that's what it comes down to. And he's had his injury issues here and there as well, so it's kind of hard to keep him on the floor, all of that. But at the end of the day, that's the best. I tell y'all all the time, he's the best three-point shooting center known to man. He really is. But Jokic is giving him a run for his money, so I respect that. But it's still Karl by the numbers, so he needs to just get in a situation like Boston, where they want to do nothing but shoot threes, and let him finally be that three-point shooting center that ultimately can really park it from behind the arc and just shoot all day. You don't have to dunk a ball one time. You know what I mean? Because he can just shoot the three all night. So I don't know if that's what's best for Karl, but if I'm Karl Towns, I probably am looking for a system like that. Golden State, something like that. Send me somewhere where the ball is going up. Dallas. Hey, look, that Dallas situation, I wonder if Dallas could probably put something together with the 10th pick. I don't know. I don't know if they have anything, but I would love to see Karl Towns maybe in Dallas, less to Luka Doncic, because I think he and Luka Doncic could really make that offense go crazy. And Karl's the type of superstar that he will still be able to kind of maneuver around Luka doing his thing, and probably will enhance what Luka does a lot by playing off of him. So I think that's curious for one reason and one reason only, because Dallas is really, really in need of a center. And obviously that would immediately take care of that problem. And on the other side of that, if they get the 10th pick, that's a really good player. I've been following the draft a lot, and they're going to have somebody good at 10. Maybe Hendricks, maybe Grady Dick, somebody like that. They're going to get somebody good. So that could be interesting for that team there. So yeah, I think Minnesota should consider what their options are with Rudy Gobert first. Try to see if you can get something reasonably decent for him. He's not coming off the worst season in the world. Your team got through the play-in tournament with hurt players, and I think that stands for something when you consider Rudy Gobert was on the floor healthy for that. I would try to shop him. See if I get anything for him. If it's even remotely what I would like to see, I'll probably pull the trigger with it being an addition by subtraction, getting his contract off the books, allowing me the flexibility to continue building around Karl Towns and Anthony Edwards as best you can. But I know they probably want that draft equity. They're going to want somebody's futures. And I'm going to say that I think they might. There's a reason in my head for them to think that they're not going to be able to pull that off, because people know that they want pick equity for Karl. Does that make any sense? Like, because you're so thirsty for picks, now I get to lowball you for those picks. And having been, on a Laker fan last summer when we were really dealing with it, it's kind of on the forefront of my mind that it could possibly go that way, especially since teams don't want to really take on salary because of the tax apron. So I don't know that they're not going to end up having a hard time moving Karl Towns for what it is they want. Now, you're gonna have offers for Karl, but as far as you getting a Rudy Gobert return to where you feel good about what you did last summer with Rudy, I don't think you're going to get that type of return for Karl Towns. What you paid for Rudy Gobert, you'll be lucky to get half of that for Karl Towns. And that's righteous, because that's how outrageous that return was for Rudy Gobert. That's what I'm telling you. That was outrageous. So as far as I could tell, Minnesota is still very much in a position to feel okay about themselves, but they just got to make sure their next move is their best move. Because at the end of the day, Anthony Edwards' career is in the balance. And trading Karl Towns is an easy thing to do, but if you trade Karl Towns for the wrong return and you stuck with Rudy Gobert, now you only got you got even fewer assets. So I don't know if they just aren't better for just going forward with Karl Anthony Towns, and trying to get rid of Rudy Gobert for whatever they can, or even stretching Rudy Gobert might be the move. Waive him just like Chris Paul. You might want, like, literally, because that might be a more safe way to play, keeping your highest valued players in a situation where you don't have any other equity. Your highest valued players. You see what I'm saying? So I don't know. Karl Towns is arguably a top 25 player in the league. Some even say he's higher than that. I don't know. Anthony Edwards is well on his way to being one of the best young guards in the league as well. He's already that. So that's a good thing. You can break everything else down around them and try to shake it up in such a way to make sense. But then again, they need the pick equity. So good luck to Minnesota in trading Karl Towns for picks. If they're not trading Karl Towns for picks, I'm really confused. That's what it comes down to. If they're not trying to get a record-sized return for Karl Towns and picks, then they're not doing it right. I think trying to trade him to New York makes the most sense to me right now. I'm all that in my head, and as I look around, I realize he's from New York, and New York has 7 first-round draft picks. 7 of them. And so that's what I know. The New York Knicks are loaded with picks because they didn't get a chance to give them all away for Donovan Mitchell. And even though Stephen A. Smith was pissed about it, I assure you his team is better because he didn't do that. Now they have an opportunity to bring the hometown kid back to New York. Maybe that's the move. Throw Juju in, you know what I'm saying? Get Juju to a third party, however that goes. Because I probably ain't gonna want him in Minnesota. Send Juju somewhere for the salary match and get the pick equity necessary to New York, or rather Minnesota. Get them their picks. The other team who's going to take Juju's probably going to want 1 pick or something just to take that salary. Believe it or not, they may. I don't know about that because that contract is kind of mature. Juju's has, so I don't know. But nevertheless, I look at that situation. I say New York is definitely the first team I try to make a trade to get Karl Towns to, because I know what type of pick equity they got, and I know he's from there. The Brooklyn Nets just the same. They got 2 first-round picks in the back of the draft, bunch of young players that they can give away. I think Brooklyn actually has a really good situation going for themselves right now, believe it or not, because they got all those wings, and wings are so very needed in this league. They can shop Bridges and probably get a similar return to what Minnesota would get for Karl. I'm not even kidding. So that's kind of what I'm looking at there. And then Cam Johnson, I think, is a free agent. I would try to re-sign him if I'm them. But that's a whole nother story. Maybe Minnesota should try to sign him if they free up some cap space and lose Naz Reid. But all this different stuff goes through my head, and I'm just saying, we're going to have a great summer right now. I'm telling y'all. This draft's coming up, and all these trades are expected for the first couple of picks in this draft. You couple that with even more draft conversation about, like, Amen Thompson. Now it seems like he's slipping. Jarris Walker seems like he's rising up. Things like that are happening. It's like, whoa, as we get closer to this draft, there's a lot of shakeup that could be taking place with the league. So I'm going to try to keep my ear to the NBA streets. Of course, giving you guys as much as I can. My name is BDL44. I thank you all for watching. I'm out.